So, you know those moments when you think, this is going to be super easy, and then, well, it's anything but? Yeah, that was me with this surprise party I tried to throw. It was supposed to be one of those straightforward deals, just a quick surprise for my mom's birthday. Simple, right? All her favorite people hiding in the living room, counting down like ants in a sugar factory, ready to yell, surprise! And watch her face light up. But here's the thing, as the seconds ticked down and everyone crouched behind couches and chairs like we were about to jump out and scare a ghost, I noticed this weird flutter in my stomach. Something wasn't quite right. Like imagine you're about to open a bag of chips and you can already tell it's mostly air. Yeah, that kind of feeling, but for a party? Still, I tried to shake it off. I mean, what could go wrong with adults stifling their giggles behind a couch? Then this purple balloon of all things decides to slowly inch away from where it was taped to the ceiling and start floating right toward the front door. I swear it moved with the sneaky determination of a cat trying to stalk a bird. Jake, my best friend, the guy who helped plan this whole thing, gave me this panicked look like, uh-oh. Meanwhile, my little sister Emily was supposed to be the lookout, but she was too busy whisper laughing, trying not to give anything away because, well, that basically meant she already had. Just as I was about to wave at Jake to grab the rogue balloon before it ruined everything, I heard this creak, just the tiniest noise, but enough to make the hairs on my neck stand up. The front door swung open. Mom stepped inside, mumbling something about dropping off her dry cleaning because she'd forgotten it in the morning. Perfect timing, except, not perfect at all. Everyone froze. Jake's eyes were the size of saucers. Emily almost dropped a juice box. Me? I felt like I was standing in the middle of a cartoon that's about to run out of control. Instead of the cheerful, surprise, moment we practiced in our heads 100 times, it was looking more like a live blooper reel. And just like that, the whole thing started to spiral faster than I could say cake. So here's where it all really started to take shape, or, well, fall apart from the get-go. I decided to throw this surprise party for Mom's 50th birthday because, it's a big deal. Half a century! That's 5 whole decades of Mom being the unstoppable force that's kept our family running. And I thought, what better way to celebrate than to pull off this awesome surprise? Jake was on board right away. He's always been the guy with grand ideas, so he helped me plan every little detail. The decorations, the guest list, the cake, and of course making sure my mom had absolutely no clue. The plan was almost too perfect. We even picked out a playlist that was a blend of Mom's classic favorites and some tunes that totally screamed party. Except, then there's Emily. My younger sister, who's like the family's greatest little wild card. Emily is sweet and all, but keeping secrets? That's about as easy for her as teaching a cat to swim, and, she slipped. Big time. I caught her one afternoon staring out the window like she was about to burst, so I asked, "Hey, what's up with you? You look like you swallowed a secret." She bit her lip, and then, before I knew it, she blurted, "I can't keep it, like, you know what you're planning for Mom's birthday, right?" The surprise? Cue the sudden urge to disappear into the floor. I tried to stay chill, but inside I was like, "No, Em, no." She giggled and said, "Oops, sorry." Now, you'd think Mom would laugh it off or be all excited, right? Wrong. When Mom first heard the secret, not from me, mind you, but from Emily, who apparently thought it was more fun to announce it like she was on a game show, her reaction was weird. Not weird as in funny, but weird in that classic I did not see that coming kind of way. Her eyes went wide, like someone had just handed her a live frog instead of a birthday card. Then she smiled tight, the kind of smile that feels more like she's trying to pretend everything is fine when it's really not. I stood there watching all this unfold and I started to question everything. Was this surprise a bad idea? Had I forced Mom into something she just wasn't ready for? Because honestly, seeing her reaction made me realize the surprise party wasn't shaping up to be this effortless hit I'd imagined sitting on our couch with Jake. The night of the party, everyone was supposed to show up on time, hide in the living room like covert ninjas, and jump out with cheers and balloons. But before the guests even began to trickle in, I was already spiraling from what Emily had let slip and Mom's confusing reaction. I wasn't sure if we were about to throw her a party or crash her peaceful evening. And then, somewhere between arranging the last balloon cluster and whispering instructions to Jake, I had this nagging feeling like we were rehearsing for a play where half the actors forgot their lines. It wasn't the kind of feeling that's easy to shake off, because what if Mom just didn't want a surprise at all? What if this whole thing was a bit of a disaster waiting to happen? I looked over at Jake, who was trying to balance a tray of snacks without knocking over the table, and then at Emily, who kept darting glances toward the front door like she was expecting Mom to show up early. And that's when it hit me. This was going to be a long night, to say the least. The surprise party was no longer just a fun idea. It was turning into a full-on, live-action, awkward family drama waiting to unfold. Emily's attempt to fix things only made the whole situation tumble further. After accidentally spilling the secret, she decided to have a little heart-to-heart with Mom, probably thinking it would smooth things over like a polite apology. She sidled up with the kind of earnest look that made me want to cover my face with a blanket. I can totally keep a secret, Mom, she said, eyes wide like she was swearing on a stack of comic books. Promise. Mom raised an eyebrow, that same cautious smile still playing at the corners of her mouth. You could tell she wasn't buying it for a second. Honestly, neither was I, but Emily was trying, bless her heart, maybe a little too hard. Meanwhile, Jake and I were scrambling backstage trying to come up with the next move because the clock was merciless. Guests had started arriving earlier than planned, and here we were, with half the decorations still askew and the cake precariously perched on the kitchen counter like it was ready to make a break for it. Jake paced by the window, whispering frantic ideas about how to stall Mom's entrance, while I wasn't entirely sure if I should panic or laugh. Neither option seemed helpful, so I did the only sensible thing I could think of. I grabbed a handful of those rogue balloon strings and tried to act like everything was totally under control. That's when it happened. The front door opened earlier than even Emily dared to guess, and there stood Mom holding a dry cleaning bag and looking vaguely puzzled. There was no way we could hide what was going on. The entire living room was a mess of half-hid guests and tangled streamers, and that purple balloon I mentioned earlier was lazily drifting right where she could see it. For a suspended second, the room held its breath. Mom's eyes flicked around, taking in the crowd of familiar faces trying unsuccessfully to look casual, the scattered decorations, the cake that practically screamed party, and then, finally, she looked right at me. I made that awkward half smile, the one that says, "We're so busted," but before I could even open my mouth, she burst out laughing. Not the small chuckle of politeness, but real laughter, the kind that bubbles up when something is unexpectedly ridiculous. And honestly, it was ridiculous. She shook her head, still grinning, and said, "You guys are something else." I should have known Emily would spoil the big secret. The tension in the room eased just a little, but then something even stranger happened. Mom stepped inside fully and sat down on the couch in our chaotic, unpolished living room that was nothing like the perfect surprise I'd dreamed about. She looked around, like she was piecing the puzzle together, and then she reached out and squeezed my hand. "I guess surprises just aren't my thing," she said quietly, "but I really appreciate you all trying, especially you." She nodded at Emily, who was still blushing but also looking relieved, and then to Jake, who grinned like the hero who somehow saved the day. That moment caught me off guard. There was laughter, a little bit of awkwardness, and then this oddly warm pause where I realized maybe it wasn't about the flawless surprise at all. Yet even with that heartfelt moment, I still felt like I was missing something. The picture wasn't quite complete, like a cake that's sweet but folded unevenly. I wasn't sure if the night had gone right or wrong, but it had definitely taken a turn I hadn't expected, and with Mom sitting there, watching us all, the night was far from over. Mom sat back on the couch, smoothing down her shirt like she was trying to settle the unexpected storm of feelings that had just hit her. And us. I could tell from the way her eyes darted around the room that she was sorting through the chaos with this mix of amusement and surprise. Honestly, so was I. She sighed, that soft breath that kind of whispered, "Okay, I'm giving in, but just barely," and then smiled, this time without the tight edges. "I'll be honest," she started. "I'm not big on surprises. They make me nervous, like when you're about to get on one of those crazy roller coasters and can't quite back out." She chuckled, eyes sparkling, and there it was, the truth I hadn't really heard before. It wasn't that she didn't love birthdays or appreciate her family, she just hated the suspense, the pressure, the whole not knowing thing. But then she added with a gentler tone, "But seeing you all here trying so hard, that means a lot more than you think, even if the party fell apart kind of spectacularly." Emily, who I was still partly convinced might spontaneously combust from embarrassment, suddenly piped up. "Mom, I'm sorry for ruining the secret and for pretending I could keep one. I didn't mean to mess it up. I just wanted it to be perfect for you." You'd have thought the room might crack open with awkwardness, but instead Mom reached over and gave Emily the biggest, warmest hug. "Sweetheart, that honesty? That's perfect enough for me." Jake gave me this look, one that said, "We might actually pull this off," and I had to admit, seeing that made me feel a little lighter. The rest of the guests, who had been quietly waiting in the wings like coiled springs ready to surprise, started shifting, breaking their hiding spots, and the living room filled with chatter, laughter, and the kind of warmth that sneaks up on you when you least expect it. The party wasn't the polished, tightly choreographed event I'd imagined that morning. Instead, it was a beautiful mess. A little chaotic, a little awkward, definitely unplanned in spots, but all of it felt real. There were jokes about Emily's secret agent skills, hugs from long-lost relatives who couldn't resist popping in early, and even Mom teaching me an old dance move she used to bust out at parties when she was younger. Later, when the cake was finally cut after a small, accidental icing face smear courtesy of Jake, the room settled into something comfortable, like a well-worn sweater. Mom leaned in, a little shy, and said, "Maybe next year we can go for something a bit quieter, but this? Tonight?" It was pretty great. I laughed and shook my head, realizing that the great part didn't come from the perfect surprise. It came from all the faces gathered, the stories told, and the love behind a party that could have gone sideways at any second and did spectacularly. So, yeah, I'm still not totally sure if the chaos made things better or worse, but here's what I do know. Sometimes the best memories come from the messiest moments. The ones where you forget about the plan, lean into the awkwardness, and just enjoy the people you're with. And I can't help but wonder, if you ever find yourself in a surprise that's falling apart kind of situation, would you panic? Would you laugh? Or maybe just quietly hope someone brings the cake fast enough to distract everyone?